So whenever you guys are ready.
I'm just gonna say this, it's like, I'm not gonna be recorded, and then we'll hear snippets of what you're saying. And then in the background, it's not gonna be we're photographing you, videotaping, but like some of the footage we got from your class will be in the background as you speak, so I'm just giving you an idea of how it'll go. So it won't just be all on you the whole time. I mean, we are, but we're not gonna use it. So
that'll be cool.
Yeah, it'll be cool.
Mhm.
Just wanna give you that thought.
Mhm.
Okay, so thank you for doing this,
Mhm.
you guys. I know it's a busy time of year. So I'm gonna say, if you could say the name of your forum.
We've been teaching the Community and Mobility Forum this semester and continuing for the next year.
Thank you. And what went well in teaching these forum courses? Course for you.
どうぞ.
I think they really were exposed to completely different kinds of way of thinking about community and mobility, because I'm psychologist. I usually use just experiments and surveys and things like that, whereas Lin is political scientist and a lot more theories and qualitative methods and things like that. So definitely, I mean, I've never taught any class before with somebody from another discipline, so the students definitely got the exposures to, I think, completely different kinds of methods, way of thinking about communities and mobilities. So I think that came across,
Mhm.
hopefully. I don't know.
Yeah, so one of the purposes of the forums is to catch the students in their very first semester before they are taking a whole lot of other classes, to introduce them to the landscape of the university and the different disciplines and the way knowledge is pursued in different disciplinary contexts. And what I think a lot of students find frustrating is that they're plunged into an econ class and they're told, this is the way we think in econ. This is the right way to think, this is the logic. It's so superior that of course you're going to want to be an econ major. And then you get the same kind of a introduction in psychology. You take intro to psych and you hear this is how psychologists study the world and this is the kind of methods we use, and of course this is the superior method. And they are never really encouraged to think about the complementarity of these different ways of studying the world. And so if we can catch them in their very first semester and introduce them to the value, the fact that I don't do the kind of research Shige does, but I value it and I read it and I consume it, and similarly for him, then they will take that into all their classes and hopefully from the very beginning be thinking about the synergies between the different ways of studying. And neither one of us do ethnographies or have tried to, use stories as a basic reading material for our classes. But because we're trying to introduce not just social sciences, but the humanities and natural science to some degree to our students in the forum, I think Shige is the one who came up with some great stories of individuals who had very transient childhoods and upbringings. And to hear about their own experiences as adults, how they can see that transience of their childhood affecting the way they think and their values, was really striking to me, that they were pulling on that sometimes more than the very scientific experiments that Shige was presenting as part of his classes.
And we had several guest speakers
Mm-hmm.
whose expertise is somewhere else, so ethnography and
Mm-hmm.
demography and anthropologies and so forth. So I think that was good. I mean, I was always amazed in the final paper how often they refer to Robin LeBlanc's
Mm-hmm.
observations, that just be there, just sit there, being useless, and observe
Mm-hmm.
as a sort of a new way of thinking or doing research, which neither of us do really. So
Mm-hmm.
that was great.
I mean, one other thing that I think worked well was that this is a 2-year gen ed experience, and most of the things we teach, we see them for 1 semester and we're done. So you try to consume the knowledge, they produce it on their final exam, and they are used to, or they will soon be, because all the rest of their classes are this format, to putting that textbook and that set of books and those notes on the shelf. And whereas we're telling, we're going to see you in the second semester of your second year, you're going to do a project where you're going to pull on some of this initial exposure and the other coursework that you've done, and your time as a study abroad student, and some of the research you're going to do there, and you're going to write it up in a project. So there's much more, I saw them much more actively engaged with, okay, if I had to use this method, if I wanted to study something with this approach, how would I do that? And I need to keep that in my brain, to carry it with me at least till second year, and we hope further.
You mentioned guest speakers as activities. What other types of activities did you do?
I think Lin's activity, the negotiation task,
Uh-huh.
as a couple,
Yeah.
worked out very well in terms of, I mean, any couple need to negotiate, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can
Yeah,
look at
so
this
I'll tell
negotiation
you
task.
a little bit about
Yeah.
this particular project. We looked at mobility, not just in terms of residential transients, of where you live transients, but also moving in and out of families, so divorce and different ways in which you can lose family or lose touch with family over the course of your life. And we were reading an article by one political scientist who studies the outcomes in terms of earnings of men and women, and finds that it depends very much on how much housework their husbands do and things like that. So this was kind of a wake-up call to the students, and a very nice frame for having an active engagement where we had students in each small group in the classroom take turns negotiating with each other to see how they were going to split the housework. And we gave them certain background characteristics, so they were supposed to try to reflect the actual way in which people negotiate when they have different bargaining advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
That went well.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is unique about your forum? I know there's some cool things that they're going to do.
I think the most unique thing about our forum is the study abroad component, that basically everybody is going to study abroad, either in Spain, Italy, Japan, or South Korea. So I think that's really unique, and I mean, there they think about what community means to, you know, Spaniards and Italians and so forth, and how it's different from Americans, and I think that's just so unique. I mean, first-hand experience about learning about community and mobility. And I think they're scared, but also they're excited. So we are also scared, but
Yeah.
I think it's going to be okay. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think it was successful not just in terms of this class, but as a lesson to me in how students think about whether to study abroad. And we know that there's a tremendous fear of missing out among UVA students. Once they get here and they get integrated into the culture and the seasonal rhythms of being a UVA student, they often think, oh, I can't possibly leave this for a semester. And when, in fact, if you're here for 7 semesters and you spend 1 abroad, you still get to fully take advantage of UVA. But the fact that we had a group, all of them having made a commitment before they joined the forum to do study abroad, meant that they were in a community where they didn't have to worry about missing out. In fact, all the peers in the class are going to be abroad too. So if they weren't to do that, they would miss that. So the group who started leaning towards, I think we might want to go to Japan, they started interacting more over the course of the semester as they started planning for that future year. And it really does embody the community and mobility when you take a group of students and you move them to a whole nother country and you put them in a community where several of them are studying together. And so they will build, I'm sure they'll build, real bonds when they come back to UVA as well.
Cool, try not to talk. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
What experiences do you think students learned a lot from in your course? You might have said it already.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a whole lot to add.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you've said it kind of.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend? Would you recommend teaching in the forums to other faculty, and what insights might you share with them?
Yeah, I think that this, one of the purposes of the forums is to break down the gigantic university and the kind of alienating experience that many students have when they come here along with 3,000 of their peers, and they take classes like Intro to Microeconomics where they have 500 students in the classroom. To complement that with a class where there are just 40 of them and they're organized in the classroom in groups, and we have lots of group activities built into each class session, and they get to know us well. We are also serving as their advisors, so they come to see us before the start of the semester. They come to see us at registration times during the semester in a way that students in my larger classes have been too shy to do. So once you have that kind of a small group experience as part of your first year course, hopefully we've built some habits that even in their larger classes, they'll realize, we're just people, even though we're faculty, and they can come and knock on our door at office hours and chat about whatever is interesting them in the class.
What was the question? Again, sorry.
Would you recommend teaching
Recommend to-
forums, and
Yeah.
what insights might you
That wasn't
share?
exactly answering your question.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I think, for faculty members as well as students, our life is so within our own home department that I rarely interact with non-psychologists. And, I want to be interdisciplinary, but I'm busy, everybody else is busy, so it's so hard to get to know political scientists, economists, and so forth. So I think this is a great, platform in which you can actually interact with somebody who share sort of topical interest. And I think I learned quite a bit from Len and Len's readings that I would never have read myself. The book assigned 1 week, like Hirschman's, Exit, Voice, and Loyalty. That's great. I heard about it, but I never really read, and that was great. And I read a lot of Putnam's other empirical papers, but I've never read his book, What Makes Democracy Work. Is that right? Yeah. So I think it's a great way to actually be a little bit more interdisciplinary, and you can actually learn something from others. And I think as a faculty, you don't have this continuing education part of it. That once you get PhD, you're done. You're just doing your very specialized kind of research and teaching. So I think to me this was really just coming out of this very specialized area of social psychology to much broader area. It was fun to teach some essays and things like that I've never done before. I think there is some advantages as well as challenge in terms of time and so forth. But yeah.
Did you have to do planning a lot? How often did you do that together?
You think that we met a lot, right?
Yeah.
To come up with the syllabus.
Yeah, we did most of our
the
planning
readings.
front-loaded.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on your style. By assigning who's mostly responsible on each week, we divided some of the work of the actual preparing the lesson plan for a given class so we didn't have to coordinate weekly. But ahead of time, we had to figure out how this series of topics was going to fit together, and we were going to try to represent several different countries. We wanted the students to get a little bit of Spain, a little bit of Italy, a little bit of South Korea, and a little bit of Japan, while also getting a little bit of psychology, political science, economics, history, anthropology.
So that was
So
a lot
that
of
was
work.
that was the biggest challenge, was figuring out how to do that in a coherent way.
Right.
But the students, we told them on the very first day that unlike a lot of their classes where they were going to sit there, take notes, and absorb what the professor said, in this class you're going to be responsible for the learning, and much more in preparing every week ahead of time, and having a lot of back and forth during the class where we're going to ask questions and you're going to participate in providing the answers. You got to be ready to bring your own perspective to bear each week and contribute that to the class as one of the contributors of learning. So that is, I found it fun to see that kind of blossom in these students.
Yeah, and I think first-year students are more excited about, class in general.
Mm-hmm.
Just that many of them don't have chance to really interact with the professors,
Mhm.
whereas the forum is the place where these excited students can actually interact with the professors. So I think you tend to have probably better interactions than in your typical intro class that you teach.
Okay, anything else you want to say? That was great. Thank you so
I'm
much.
sure that's way more than anybody's going to listen to.
That's where edit.
Yes.
Yeah, we